Hey, Reef Builders, welcome to Reef Therapy session number 70. Today we're going to go through some tank-based therapy, comments. I'm interested to know what your guys' favorite coral keepers coral are. I'll explain a little bit later. And remember, if you want 10% off an ICP test, RT10 at icpanalysis.com. We've had a bunch of people say, hey, use that code. Thanks for the dollars off. Because, I mean, if you're getting regular ICP tests, you might as well use the code RT10 and get some money off of that. First, let's welcome Mark back. Mark.
Hey.
You look lighter.
I am.
And thinner.
It was a good trip.
How was backpacking?
It was great. I have 3 friends, and I've been backpacking with them or doing paddle trips, one or the other, depending on if there's a river there, for 20 years. And every year, you're at your local bar trip planning, and the beer takes hold, and you escalate. Like, what if we go here? What if we go there? And so we kept escalating to some pretty interesting, crazy places. And now those same 3 guys and we all have kids. And those kids are old enough to take camping, and we're like, all right, let's level down, but take the kids with us. So that's what we did this year, and it was a lot of fun. So
how did the kids fare with all that?
Good. We went to the Eastern Sierras, if anybody knows what that's about, but just the eastern slope of the Sierra Nevada mountains in California, kind of rolling off into Nevada. And, I think everybody saw the news. California has had record-breaking snowfall, and all that snow is now melting. And so all the creeks and the rivers are just blown out. Like, you can't even fish in. If you fall in, you're gone kind of thing. So it was a little bit like, this trip where we're taking 8-year-olds and 7-year-olds, like, how's that going to go? But it magically all worked out. The permits we had didn't work out because those areas were still frozen over, but we found some good alternate plans, and the kids did great. My son, he's just walking across snow and, big cliffs and everything that helicopter parent worried about, how's he gonna, he was just like, yeah, no, it's fine. We were in the tent one night, and it just started hailing, and I know this because I had to go take a leak at 3 a.m, and I was like, oh, those thunder sounds bad, I better go take a leak. And then all of a sudden you're getting hit by little golf balls, and you're like, well, this sucks. And I crawled back into my tent, and it's just thundering, and things are hitting the tent, and I was like, oh, this kid's gonna freak out. My son, he woke up for 5 seconds. He's like, hey, Dad, are we gonna be okay? And I was like, yeah, we're gonna be fine. He's like, okay. And he just went right back to sleep. Meanwhile, I laid there is the tent gonna hold? So yeah, good trip.
That's awesome. This is not a trip where you go to a local fish store in the area, right?
No, there's no local. There's fish catching, but they're not saltwater variety. So lots of trout, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like these are those memories are the core memories that your kids are going to take with them forever. I'll never forget, growing up in the Midwest, our lakes and ponds are okay, but we go to Minnesota every once in a while, and you just get the clear water, northern fish and walleye, and you can see, you're up on the boat and you can see 15, 20 feet all the way to the bottom and fish down there. It's I'll never forget any of that. My mom hated it. She wanted to go to the Mall of America the entire time, but all of us kids, we loved it, in the lake every day playing. It was a ton of fun. So
Boundary Water Canoe Area, northern Minnesota. I've been there 8 times. I love it. I love Minnesota.
Yeah. We were right around Leech Lake area.
Yeah, I know that.
I think north of St. Cloud a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
My dad used to vacation in Longville, and Longville is famous for turtle races.
Okay.
So you go to the center of town. It's a small town. You go to the center of town, and there's all these turtle rental vendors, and you go and you pick out a turtle. You
can rent a turtle,
$5, and then everybody, all the kids sit in the middle with their turtles, and whichever turtle goes to the outside of the circle first is the winner. I don't think mine moved more than 6 feet or something like that. But I mean, those are those fun things, So if we have any Minnesota listeners, let us know in the comment section for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Raj, what you drinking tonight?
I got the Terrapin Luau.
Okay.
Oh, did you not find the baby? Was it the baby Jesus?
The sweet baby Jesus.
Sweet
I looked,
baby Jesus.
and I have not found it yet, but I'll find it. There's a liquor store close to me that has a ton of beer. And I haven't had a chance to swing by there yet, so that's going to be my next stop. I actually thought about it today, but I had meetings that was running late, and I'm like, you know what? I can't do it. I can't stop. I need to go home, take a power nap, and then jump on this call.
When do we get Sweetwater to sponsor us? Because I think we've brought them up so many times.
I think I might need to make a call, right? I mean, they're not that far from us, or maybe just we stop by.
Throw them a
Of course.
something.
I mean, like I saw like a week ago, Ed Sheeran just dropped into the brewery and drank a bunch of beers and played a song. So they might be like, reef therapy, what? Like, I think they...
But he doesn't know corals and fish. Come on.
That's right.
Well, and how much would it cost to sponsor us? I think by sponsorship, we just mean you and I get local, beer. That's it. Like, I don't need cash just to fund my liver habit,
That's it. I mean, it would cost them tens of dollars in beer.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you remove all the retail markup, it's like, yeah, here's a keg. Just shut up. Of course, the podcast might drastically change at that point.
I don't know. We might get to reef stuff earlier.
Yeah, that's true.
Or it just might be like, I love you. No, I love you.
I love you, man. And I love your turtles.
Turtles.
There are saltwater turtles. So
that's true.
The marine turtles. I was at an arcade. I took my son to an arcade last weekend, and they had a big Sweetwater 420 sign on the side of on the wall, and I was like, I should try that. It's here, and I didn't. I felt like I needed to be responsible. Yeah,
I'm disappointed in you.
Sweetwater
what do you
is
got?
Disappointed in you. They just pulled their. They just said
we lost the
They pulled their
sponsorship.
It's over. It's done.
It's over. Mark, what do you got tonight?
Well, I had 2 Sweetwater 420s after my Wednesday run, and I was just telling you guys before the podcast starts, like, I'm good for 2 beers, but we got a podcast to do. And then at the bar at the end of the trail running, they were promoting some beer, and they were like, whiskey, and they were like, oh, here's a free whiskey with a free cup. But I didn't drink it. I did keep the cup, so I'm just drinking Heineken at this point because I got to keep somewhat my wits about me here.
As you do.
Yeah.
I've got a whiskey here tonight. This is a local whiskey. This is Old Monroe.
Ooh.
Stumpy's Old Monroe. This is a pecan flavored whiskey. This is really good as like kind of a mixer.
You drink weird stuff, you know that? Every podcast, you show up with something really interesting.
Well, the Sweetwater guys, I got to differentiate myself somehow. So, but this is probably 10 miles away from our house, but they grow the corn and all the stuff themselves and do like it's all in Monroe County, which is where I'm at. So,
So local to a T. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they've got a bunch of stuff too. Maybe they'd be a good sponsor as well. We'll see. We shall see. Okay, I'm going to start today with the therapy portion of the show. So I might be getting a new tank. I am getting a new tank, and it's going to be substantially bigger than all of these. So that's good. So I wanted to know from your guys' perspective, your tank is in the basement, right, Mark?
It was. I moved it back up top.
Okay.
But I've had it in the basement. I've had the tank upstairs with the sump in the basement. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. So I'm a little nervous because it's about a 6-foot tank. It's about 26 inches deep and about 27 high. Would you guys say to mock something up with like 1/2-inch PVC pipe and mock up what the tank's dimensions are, or just use that tape measure? I've got a pivot
to actually carry it in to
kind of carry it in and see how it would go down the stairs. I think that's my biggest worry is front door's fine, front hallway's fine. There's a little bit of a tight squeeze in that hallway there's a bathroom right across the basement door. And so there's going to be a little bit of a jockey there, and then we've got a pivot downstairs, so it's not just a straight shot down the stairs. And I'm worried about the depth, I think, most of all. It'll fit lengthwise, but
26 is interesting, right? Because you talk about your average interior door measurement. 26 starts to get a little bit tight. 24 is easy. I've never done PVC. I've done cardboard, right?
Okay.
Where I did the footprint of the tank, because I feel like, I mean, but you're talking about 27 inches high. So yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with the PVC. I don't think it's going to hurt you to do that. It's like, if you're willing to put the effort in to do that, it's probably worth it. But if you have cardboard laying around and you get the footprint at least, you know, you can always pull out the tape measures like, okay, well, now this footprint's at an angle. Do I have 27 inches with a tape measure?
yeah.
I don't know. You know, like, use what you got, right? I mean,
PVC seems too flexible to me. Like it's going to give.
yeah.
So if you're making
That's a
that
good
tight
point.
turr, it can bend and it can get a little wonky.
I mean, you got to kind of factor that in, right?
Too.
My wife, who's like bending it around the corner. This is so light. Does this how light your tank's going to be? No. I think the other thing that I am worried about is these are super freaking heavy, and your side guys, you know, the guys on either side aren't going to be able to fit down the hallway of the basement. So
It's
there's-
3/4 inch glass probably, because it's rimless, right? So it's heavy.
I think there's going to be there's going to have to be some sort of ramp system that's devised, or I don't know,
And a pulley system.
Don't make fun of me. This is like the biggest tank I've ever had. Okay, I'm just trying to do it right, guys.
You have to go big. Sir Mix-a-Lot
I got
didn't
lucky.
make a song about small butts. He made a song about big butts. So
Yeah.
go big.
Just go. I'm in the basement. Just go through the exterior door. Like, this is my exterior door to my basement, by the way. So yeah, you don't have that, do you? And you're like in Colorado, where you have like the windows
like-
in the wells outside, and that's like, there's no way in.
No. We had a walkout in our last house, and this one has what are called lookout windows.
Yeah, the fire escape windows.
Yeah. So even if we wanted to slide it through one of those, it's still too small.
Those are the windows
wanted
that you
to,
see
like-
in those kidnapping movies when people can't escape. Yeah.
Yep. When I first started the Llama channel, there was cardboard in those. I don't know if you remember that. And then I got blinds. You know.
Don't
and
those always
upgraded it.
flood too? Because they get like the metal, and it just fills with snow. And
There's no. So these are in the foundation, like in the wall. So it's actually in the concrete around the house. It's not.
okay.
So we've had like window wells before, and I think that's pretty much the case in Illinois. If you have a downstairs basement room that you want to be considered a room in your home plot, it needs to have a window, what they call an egress window, that would allow you to exit that room in emergency. We have 2 rooms down here that do not have windows in them, so we can't consider them rooms if we were to ever list a house. So, but if you ever walked in here, you'd be like, "Oh, that's a room." Okay.
yeah, we have a bedroom that has no window in the basement, but you can't call it a bedroom because technically there's no escape, right?
Yeah.
I think our rule
Yeah.
was that it had to have a closet in order for it to be called that was a bedroom. If it's a bedroom, it needs a closet.
But in the basement, like, my rooms have closets, but I have a room that has no window, and I can't call it a bedroom when I list it, if I were to list a house.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know the bedroom.
Technically, someone shouldn't sleep in there because if there's a fire, there's no window to climb out of.
I see. That makes sense.
Toast.
That's pretty
Yeah.
smart. Yeah.
Meanwhile,
So-
this is my office, and this is considered technically a bedroom, but there's no way you could fit a bed in here. But it has a closet, it has a window, it has a door.
And
It's
it has
just-
the
there's-
sofa.
Well, yeah, like, that's the only place you could put a bed, but you'd block the door. Like, there's no way to put a bed in this room, but it's a bedroom.
Gotcha.
So,
So you guys are just saying go with it and just have a tank delivered to my driveway,
and just wing it, yeah.
swing it.
Are you
Yeah.
going to mock it up in the space and see if it's going to
Yeah,
how it looks
yeah. You
on
put
that
the
wall?
tape down on
Yeah.
on the floor and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I might have to. So this wall right here to my left is bigger, and I'd have to move this shot because I want it in the background of shots.
Make sure all your friends sign a waiver that if they get crushed when it comes down the stairs, they can't sue you. That's my only advice.
I'm thinking about employing all of my friends at the local fish store, so they've got the the suction cups and all that kind of stuff.
They're bonded,
So.
insured. They do installs.
Yeah. Raj said I should just go to Gold's Gym and go find the biggest dudes I can find and see if they'd come over.
Yeah.
Yeah, just talk some smack. Be like, hey, bro, I heard you can't lift a tank. Do you even lift, bro?
It'd make an awesome TikTok reel or Instagram reel.
There's a fish store here in Atlanta, but it's like way far away from us. It's down in like Marietta, and you would know the name of the store, Raj. But they were running a special on Red Sea tanks, and I bought a Red Sea tank from them. And I was like, hey, can you guys put it in my basement for me? They're like, yeah, sure. And it was like that. It was like the Gold's Gym dude showed up where I was a little intimidated. Like, these guys could just knock me out and just, like if they were not nice people, like I'd be screwed right now. And they were super nice people and they like put the tank in the right place, but they were freaking huge dudes.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
They bring it in like one of those old school boom boxes on the shoulder and
yeah. It was like
well, do you want it?
What was Ving Rhames' character in Pulp Fiction? It was like if he sent
Marcellus Wallace.
Yeah, it was like Marcellus Wallace sent his crew to install a fish tank. I was like, they were like tough looking dudes. I was like, okay, all right, hey, how you doing? You guys want something to drink?
Yeah.
Remy would find Hans and Franz. Do you remember?
Oh,
this?
gee, yeah. They'll pump you up. What was it like? Hear me now, believe me later.
I have heard that hiring moving companies is good sometimes because they are insured, and if anything does happen, it's on them. But I would imagine that would come at a little bit of a cost. I mean, if it's on your driveway, they're not having to haul it very far. It's just getting them to show up and paying them for an hour of their time, I would imagine.
Yeah, but how many reef forum threads do you see where like the guy waited like 3 months for a custom build and then he brought his friends in and then they chipped the corner of the tank and the tank is ruined?
Yep.
Yeah, it was like cry once versus, just pay to have it done right versus like, oh, we'll just get my old college buddies because they owe me a favor. And then like they bang like on a rimless tank, they hit the corner and they chip it and you're like, and then there's always that thread like, do you think this will still hold water? Like, do you think this is okay? And you're always like, nobody's going to tell you yes. Like nobody's like, maybe,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I agree with that assessment.
Okay. All right. I think I kind of have an idea now. Raj, we'll leave your event session here for last.
No, I can go. I actually made progress on my tank.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I started. Right. I iced out the back panel, so instead of it being blacked out, it's iced out so that it's like a frosted. Yep.
Oh, nice.
And I'm gonna
diamonds.
You put diamonds across the back.
It's blinged out, like my left glove that I always wear.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to uplight that from the back to give it a little different look. And Mike from ADG does that on a lot of his freshwater scapes, and I want to steal that idea and see how it looks on a reef tank.
That'd be
so cool. I think that'll be cool. So I've got that going, drilled the stand, everything ready now to start getting plumbed up. But I haven't built the sump yet, but I've designed the sump. I know what skimmer I'm going to use. I am going to use a roller on there. Not doing filter socks. We're going to go with the roller. But I haven't really decided on the return pump. So I haven't looked at that yet. I don't know. Maybe.
So are you looking at non-MRC stuff for that, or
for the return pump? Yeah.
And skimmer.
It's a tight space underneath, so I want to use a submersible. Just not sure which route to go yet. So I don't know if you guys have opinions. Drop them in the comments, or what do you guys think?
I just feel like the Vectras are nice. How many gallons is it?
I should probably know that.
How long is it?
It's a 6-foot
that?
tank. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember what were the dimensions on it? It's not very big. I want to say it's about 150 gallons, maybe.
Okay.
Something like that. So I don't need a ton of flow. I don't need a huge return pump for this.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a Vectra. I like it. I like the controllability of it, of course. But you're Raj, so maybe like a Biz or something.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That might be a tad overkill on this. Just a touch.
Well, and I mean, as much as I shit on Apex sometimes on these Reef Therapy, I'm like an Apex closet fanboy, and I like all the controllability. So to me, a return pump has to be somewhat controllable, or at least have its own app. So I like Seche. I like
Seche
I like
too.
the Vectras a lot.
So you put your return pump on that Apex?
I did for a long time. I had a core pump, and I just recently went to a Seche SDC something, and it's been bomb-proof. I do have it plugged into an Apex. The Apex isn't controlling the DC power to it, but it is turning it on and off when I want to do a water change. I have one of those control boxes where I push a button, like, hey, I'm about to do a water change, and it turns off the return pump, turns off the skimmer. And then I press the button when I'm done doing a water change, and everything powers back up. And it's been bomb-proof for that. So
yeah, I would never. I never put return pumps on those Apexes. Just
no.
When that Apex dies, it's going to shut off your return, and that kind of kills your system. So I want my return just straight powered from the wall, so that if the pump dies, then it dies. But I don't want there to be a power interruption or a controller interruption to affect my tank.
Yeah,
Not
the
in
Apex
that
has
regard.
I forget what Apex calls it, but basically you said it like, if the Apex goes to shit and unresponsive, like, what do you want us to do with this outlet? Do you want us to turn it off, or you want us to leave it on? Shoot. I don't have everything in front of me to Google, so I apologize. Like, somebody in the comments is already typing, listening to this. Like, it's, but
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I forget
You know
what
what I
it's
mean,
called
yeah.
too, right?
But I sort of trust that, because I also trust the Apex not to flood my house. So
I don't trust that.
yeah,
Not for that.
well,
Not for that. But I do like the
Don't
CJ
get me
pumps.
started. Like, I'll shit on Apex for a week and see, I'm cussing again. I'm sorry, but like, there's a lot I don't like that I think Apex could do better. But I am still a fanboy. Like, I think their UI is great. I love it. So I just wish the hardware was a little bit better.
They just released their Mobius breakout, where you can control all the lighting from within the app and everything.
Shouldn't that be free? I mean, I'm just I
don't
That's
know.
what happens when I have 2 beers before I join.
For those of you that like your controls all in one place,
We
then
can
that's
sell
what-
it at all these companies, but if you want it all to play together, you got to pay us. It's like, come on, man. Like, that should just be, I don't know. That's,
I do. Is it a peninsula, Raj?
No.
Where are your overflows?
No, it's on the back wall. Overflow's on the
Okay.
back wall. Yeah.
Is it like a
But it's
ghost
a-
overflow, or is it
No,
like
it's an internal, because I wanted to put the tank all the way against the wall.
Okay.
So it's an internal trapezoidal overflow on the back wall. It is rimless.
who built it?
We did, MRC.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it's one of our hybrid tanks. It's got glass sides, acrylic
PVC
overflow.
bottom, or-
Yeah, it's a laminated PVC bottom, so it is black. From the inside, it's black. It's
Neat.
cool.
So with the frosted glass, because I've done this on smaller tanks before, on saltwater like macro algae tanks, where you light it from the back. Is that overflow going to kind of break that up too much, or are you going to use that to your advantage in the aquascape somehow?
I mean, it wasn't planned to do that. The back was going to be black. So yeah, it is going to obviously kind of screw with the flow a little bit. So now the aquascaping plan has to change to where that center portion is more covered. And then the left and the right will be a little bit more open.
Well, you get some corals in there. That'll cover it up. No, I don't think so. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out. That's cool because you see it on a lot of the smaller tanks, but on a larger tank, 6-foot tank, you don't see that too often in saltwater.
Yeah, right, in saltwater. So I love the way that it looks on the freshwater tanks and on those hardscapes. So I'm hoping that it works out. I have to figure out some sort of LED though to uplight it.
Yeah,
something sleek.
Yeah, something.
Just keep it clean, right? Keep the coralline off the back. So, but that's not hard.
Now, I was always a freak with that stuff too. Like I would scrape that overflow. I wanted it pristine. I didn't like that whole coral and algae covered look. So I'm going to freak out about the bottom of the tank where I can't get to spots since it's going to be a bare bottom. That's going to be difficult.
Yeah, it seems easy when when you get into it. You're like, oh yeah, this will be just scrape around it. Nah. That's why
I like my sand. That's why I like sand on the bottom.
Crushed coral.
Or that.
Well, sorry, calcium reactor media sounds a lot sexier than crushed coral.
Julian's Reborn. That makes a really, really good substrate.
Although it wasn't my friend when I came back from my trip this week, so yeah.
Good transition here. Raj, are you good?
Good.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear the progress. I really am. I'm not joking. I swear.
Well, I couldn't report back with another goose egg, right?
Well, it's like those 90s sitcoms where you're waiting for those two people to hook up, and they don't do it till like the series finale. You're like, it's been 8 years. That's your tank. It's like Frasier with Niles and I forget the lady's name. She was like the physical therapist that lived with them or something. I just alienated a lot of people. Sorry. My wife made me watch that show. So,
gosh, Lauren, my wife loves Frasier.
Okay, well. So you know what I'm talking about.
I don't actually. I didn't watch it with her. So
thanks for backing me up on that. I appreciate it.
I never watched Friends, and she gives me crap about that all the time.
Yeah, Friends was phenomenal.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, both of you.
The guy's waiting with his timer. Like, when are they going to start?
I will transition to you, Mark, for this one because I really genuinely want to know. Like, you were gone for 2 weeks. How did everything fare?
Oh man, this one goes out to Unorthodox Reef, who convinced me to keep my Regal Angel. I'm not lying or making this a story of convenience or whatever. Like, I came back and my wife went out of town the same week. She's like, well, if you're going backpacking with our son, I'm taking our daughter to visit my family in Colorado. I was like, all right. I come back and the first thing I notice is my Reborn substrate media has little turfs of green algae. I was like, what on earth? I was like, all right, something died. Like, something is just fueling this decomposition. And then you start doing your fish check, and the one fish that's missing is my Regal Angel. And then my wife's like, oh yeah, there he is, just stuck against the overflow, just decomposing, stuck. It was a real bummer. So I removed him. I did 2 water changes to try to just level set everything, and things are, the algae's going away and everything's going better, but it was just kind of a bummer. Like, you make the decision, you know what, this fish is worth it. So I can't, so it eats every chalice coral, whatever, it's worth it. And then it dies on you. So I'm trying to make, what's the saying? Lemons out of lemonade. I'm like, oh, well, now I can introduce certain corals that I knew it just would mow down. But yeah, it's just kind of a bummer. So that's what I'm sort of dealing with. And then my basement tank had a weird algae outbreak too, but I've been just I mean, Richard Ross has talked about this a lot. It's like you just got to go nuclear, like with a brush the hell out of it, throw in some more snails. I had some razor. I don't really like the whole chemical dump method for anything, but the razor is actually pretty good. It's like a polymer that makes it hard for things to attach to things, and you can just see the algae that's trying to root in your rocks start to struggle. It's really good for like Valonia and stuff. And I don't know, Jake and I have talked about it like that. That's like one product that just seems to be, it's not an algicide. It's just this weird polymer that makes everything in your tank really slippery, so nothing can grow in anything. And I'm probably getting that wrong, but that's just how we see it. But it really helped. Like, it's like you go in there with a toothbrush, but like nothing else can root. And so that cleaned that tank up in a matter of days. And it's like, all right, well, I'll just keep trucking. So
nice.
That's the bummer. But
any indication as to what caused the Regal's death?
No. My auto feeder was out of food, but I suspect that was maybe a day before I got home, because I filled that thing up pretty good. And everybody else was like plump and happy, right? Every tang, every cardinal fish, hawkfish, everybody's looking great. So I don't know. No signs of disease. I haven't done anything like an ICP test or anything weird like that, but it's just odd. Like one fish. I mean, my Genicanthus angel's swimming around, fat, happy. My flame angel's happy. So it's just like the one fish you decide like you're worth it. It's like, well, now I got to die. It's like when you name a fish, like, well, now I got to die. Like, you gave me a name, So I'm not trying to make light of it because it sucks, but yeah. And that was a deer fish because for those that know TSM Aquatics and Matt, who started TSM, who passed away, yeah. He and I like chatted about that fish. That fish came from them. I was literally acclimating it. And I just always like to do a stupid trick where I throw a couple of pellets in, and like to have a Regal angel eating prepared food in the bucket while it's being acclimated. You're like, okay, that's pretty awesome, So it was a bit of a downer that fish had some sentimentality with all that. So
yeah, that's tough. I'm sorry to hear.
No, that's all right. It comes with the hobby, right?
Yeah.
How about
like
you?
You said, you get to experiment with some new stuff. So
you talked about your new tank, but what about your existing tanks? What's going on there?
Preparing for some sort of breakdown. Okay. I don't know if you remember when kind of a breakdown, just a move, really. Do you remember when I talked about I randomly last winter bought a aqua hydroponics tray, one of those just like foot deep trays. It's already plumbed and everything, so I think I'm just gonna build a stand for that. And all the coral that I've got, like I'm gonna keep the Uno and Doses tank, but the lagoon and the frag tank, I think I'm gonna move the coral that I want into that thing. Just get it out of this little area behind me and prepare for that, and then maybe have not one but two larger display tanks over here. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. I was thinking about, so I've got like a 65 that has just been sitting here staring at me for the last year and a half. I want to do like a fish only, maybe like a fowler or something like that. I wouldn't be able to do anything super huge in it as far as fish go, but it'd be fun to get a lot of those dwarf angels, those pygmy angels in there, and the ones that you don't know if they're going to pick on coral or not. But so that's kind of my plan. First step is to get this larger tank down here. I guess first step is to get these ones out of the way and then get the larger tank down here. But I'm excited. I'm really excited for this. So we'll talk more about that, obviously, on the channel, on the Rebuilders channel. We'll go through that whole storyline of setting up a new tank and preparing for it and aquascaping and all that kind of stuff. So
if you survive, like the tank coming down the stairs.
You know what, Mark? I didn't really need that.
I'm just messing with you, man.
One of my college buddies cracks the corner. It's going to be on you.
You call it Mark's Corner.
Yeah, and then I'll post it up on Reef to Reef, like, hey, you guys think this is gonna hold water? Or
I'm telling you, you can find those threads, and it's just like, you can tell in his mind or her mind, like they're just trying to salvage it. Like, we're okay, right? We're okay.
Yeah.
And then like everybody's like, no, that's.
Throw some razor in there, you're good.
Yeah.
We'll sometimes get calls randomly from consumers where they want us to come out and repair an aquarium that they bought, and we're like, yeah, we're not doing that.
No.
But I always get pictures first, just for my own entertainment, to see what the hell they bought.
That's funny.
You like share it with the office, like, oh my god, look at this guy.
It's always a dumpster fire situation, right? It's something that they bought used, and it's usually this huge tank that's been sitting outside for a few years. So it's got leaves in the corners, and
The silicone's all dried out.
It's just awful, and the tank's falling apart. I'm like, wow, that really just needs to go straight into the dumpster. And then we'll get calls from all of the local stores and service companies, because they've started reaching out to each one of them, and then they call us. We're like, no, we're not doing it. We're not touching anybody's tank. But it's pretty entertaining.
Before we started this, I just mentioned to Raj that Biota had announced that they've got emperor angelfish, captive bred emperors for sale now, which I thought was pretty cool. That's my favorite fish, hands down, from juvenile all the way through to adult. I just think they're so awesome.
That could be a cool replacement for you.
Yeah. You should do that.
I've done a emperor and a 180 reef tank, and it was really well behaved. The only thing it ate was micromusas. But then when he changed to an adult, he became a tyrant. And they grunt, which is kind of cool. Like, you can hear them vocalize their frustrations. But it's just like this grunty, angry fish swimming around. And I eventually, a friend in Chicago who had like a 400-gallon fish only, was like, I'll take him. And to ship the fish to him, because I don't have like a wholesale business FedEx account, right? It cost me more than, I'm like, you could go buy an emperor angelfish in Chicago for like a third of the cost, but we still did the transact. Like, I still shipped it to him. But yeah, that's like my all-time favorite. Not to talk people out of buying the fish, but then like you go scuba diving and you see a full-grown emperor, and you're like, I can't keep that fish in captivity anymore.
Yeah.
They're beasts in the wild. I mean, they're like this thick around. You're just like, same with like Dusmarai tanks. You're like, that could feed a village. Like, why am I trying to keep that in a 6-foot tank in my basement, in America?
Yeah. They say here on the description, 250 gallons is recommended for long term on the species.
I agree with that. Yeah, a 180 is way too small.
Over 1 foot in size, so an aquarium over 250 gallons is recommended.
Mine,
I just think it's cool that they're captive breeding them now.
Yeah,
I think mine was roughly around a foot long. I'm talking about the fish.
Like, that's a really small tank.
Well, you've seen here in Pure Reef, the fish only system, they got a massive emperor in there. That's
my emperor, I had one of those orange tail ones. I think,
oh, nice.
I forget
Fancy.
where he was from, but God, that orange tail was just perfect.
Yeah, they're my all-time favorite fish too. Just perfection in a fish. I mean, the colors, everything. As a kid, like, you see that fish, you're like, whoa. That, like, why would nature paint that? Like, design a fish to look like that. So yeah,
multiple times in its life too. Those juveniles are striking.
Yeah.
I'm excited that they're breeding the Potter's Angel, because that's my all. I mean, I've always kept Potters. I can't afford the captive bred one, but I understand why they cost that much. Like, I'm not here to complain about the price. Like, I get it. Breeding that thing and sufficient numbers and the work that went into it, like, charge that much. I can't justify it, but like, that's a cool fish. Those are such great fish. So, and they've always been a bit weird. Like, you'll get one that does great for a decade, and then you'll get one that just wastes away. Like, and Hawaii's not doing cyanide or anything weird, but they can be hit or miss. So a captive bred version of that is really a big win because that thing's going to do great.
Well, I wonder how much cheaper the wild caught ones end up being after you start calculating in fish loss.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's just that was one thing going backpacking and you have many hobbies and you start to price compare things. And you're like, okay, I could buy a fish for $900, but what does $900 get me in my other hobbies? And that's where this hobby starts to feel a little crazy sometimes.
That's why.
I'm not saying
don't do that. Don't do the price comparison.
And there's other hobbies that are very expensive too, right? Like if you're into photography, like you spend $900 on a lens, but that lens doesn't die on you, just while you're on vacation. So, but no, you're right. It's just I had that thought a few times.
I have that thought every once in a while when I travel and I have my backpack with all my camera gear. And in this one trip, I had a bunch of camera gear, and I just kind of paused at the airport and I'm like, wow, I have 50 grand in lenses and just stupid camera stuff on my back that ended up weighing like 50 pounds. So I'm killing myself in the process. But it's funny how our hobbies it's a slow bleed. Like you just keep sinking money into just different things. And with the photography, it was a specialty lens for this, specialty lens for that. And this one lens, the only thing that I'm ever going to take pictures of is the Milky Way. So, that was well, I actually love that one because those pictures kick ass. But a fisheye lens, which is practically worthless. It was cool when I first got it for like 5 minutes, and then like this is the worst thing ever. I'm never going to use it. It's totally, it's just dumb. Like you can take a picture of the back of your head facing forward because it's got such a wide angle. Yeah.
Well, if you started skateboarding, it would be good because you could do those like 1990s skateboarder fisheye videos.
I had a pretty badass fisheye lens that did astrophotography and like the Milky Way, just wide angle. Mm-hmm. That was a cool lens, but that's the only thing I could take pictures of with it.
That's it.
It was just like this.
It's the one.
Okay,
thing.
I got the whole night sky in one picture. Cool. Now what do I do with this lens? Okay, you put it, in a little bag and you put it in your closet and
I don't even know where that lens is now. It's somewhere in this house, unless my wife pawned it, because that would be funny.
I sold all my camera gear off about a week before my daughter said, "Hey, I'm really interested in photography. I'd love to get a camera." And I was like, I could have just given you I had a Canon, I had a Olympus Micro Four Thirds with all its lens. Like I had everything. I'm like, I just sold all that. Now I got to go buy something for you. No, but I was thinking my holy grail fish is a conspic angel, right? And that's a lot of people's. Mine goes back to a great Jake story, which would take up the rest of this podcast, and the guy would be like, dude. So I'm not going to go there, but I've wanted that fish since the year 2000 when Jake showed me one here in Atlanta, some fish collector, pre-Instagram, pre-bragging, like you could post on social media how awesome you are that you have this fish. This guy had the most rarest fish collection to this day I've ever seen. It beats Andrew Sandler.
Sandler, yep.
It beats his collection. And it was like near Kennesaw Mountain, for people who know Georgia, like in a guy's basement. This guy had the craziest fish collection. And the one that stood out was conspic. But it's like, I think about like the craziest trip I ever took is I went to Gates of the Arctic in Alaska, which is the most remote national park in the United States. It's the least visited. It's the size of Belgium. There's no roads. The only way you can get dropped in is with an airplane. I guess you could hike in, but that would be a really long walk. And, there's grizzly bears that think you're an alien because they rarely see people. And it's like this amazing experience. And like that cost me $3,500. And like on my deathbed, I'll remember that trip. I'm like, or I could have bought a fish. And that's where it's like comparing hobbies. You kind of go like, do you go do the thing that like when you're 90, you're like, I remember when I went to northern Alaska and 8 grizzly bears were in my camp and I'm catching salmon, or it's like, well, I bought this fish online and like 6 months later it, died because my heater melted down because nobody makes a decent heater in this hobby. And so that's where it's like, it's a dangerous thing to compare, So anyway, I'll stop there.
So Jake actually liked the angelfish for you, the conspic.
What do you mean he liked?
Like you were talking about, it was a story, but with Jake, and was it a positive?
Oh yeah, I mean it was
the conspic.
I mean everyone knows the story about punky fish store guy that kind of annoyed me in Colorado, and then I finished college and I go to Atlanta for my new corporate job, and I walk into a fish store and there's the same punky kid from Colorado, and that was Jake. Like I've told that story a million times, but he was taking care of this guy's fish tank when the guy went on vacation, and it was this super rare collection of fish, but this tank was run on Eheim canister filters and a ton of copper. And I mean, I'll send you guys the pictures. I still have the pictures from my Nikon Coolpix. Yes. If you guys remember those digital cameras from back in the day. And that was the first time I saw a conspic, and it's like a brown fish, but it's all about that face, kind of like blue face angels, right? Like it's all about the face on those fish where you're like, whoa. And I was like, what is that? And I'd never seen a conspic before. And Jake's like, of course, Jake on the blah, 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 conspiculatus, dude. Like, how do you not know this? Like, And then I became obsessed with that fish.
I've always loved the conspic, and I had one in my tank, and Jake came over, and I was all proud of of how cool my conspic was. And he's like, it's not that cool of a fish, right? It's not that rare of a fish. I'm like, dude, why are you going to take this from me? What's wrong? I played it cool. I was like, yeah, I know. It's just cool. But I was crying on the inside.
Yeah. But he did that like I set up a 125 freshwater, and it was not the season for all. Like Ultims are only collected seasonally, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just waiting for Ultim season when they start collecting them, and I'm gonna get some Ultims. He's like, dude, Ultims are such boring fish. Like you don't want Ultims. Oh yeah, I think you're right. Blah blah blah. And then a year later, I go to the Reef Builder studio. And there's a tank full of Ultims, and I'm like, and
it's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, these are great. And I'm like, dude, can I just, pull up a conversation on my computer that we had a year ago? So
he did that to me once with MRC. He covered this submersible skimmer we made way back when, and it was the first skimmer that had the skimmer pump underneath. And so it was a very, very small footprint. And the article's, I'm positive it's still somewhere on Reef Builders, but he tore us up that it just shows that we don't know what we're doing and how to design a protein skimmer. And then I think Bubble King came out with their version of that with the pump underneath, and his article was like, brilliant, they're skimmer geniuses. I can't believe nobody else thought of this.
Yeah, that sounds like Jake.
Yeah. I remember bitching at him like, hey, dude.
But I think he was so good at not holding on to something like that. He'd think about it, I feel like, and then would not be afraid, like most of us would be, to change our mind and actually go with that,
Yeah.
I don't think he was being malicious, like, hey, I'm going to tell you these fish suck and then I'm going to go get them. I think that, like you said, in that stream of consciousness moment, his idea of an Ultimate Angel was like, this is boring. But then 6 months later, he probably saw a bunch and were like, well, those are pretty cool. And like, changed it. Like, you could argue, like, everybody's like, oh, Jake's, like, he's so argumentative, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but you could change his mind. Like, there's so many times where I was like, no, I disagree with you. And then a week later, he's like, yeah, you're right. And it just, he didn't hold, he didn't, what's the word? Like, somebody had a good description. Like, people hold on to their ideas and defend them to the point where, like, they don't even believe it themselves anymore, but it becomes part of their identity that they feel like they have to continue to argue. he wasn't like that. He was just like, nope,
Yeah.
no, I changed my mind on that. So,
yeah. To kind of go along with that point, Mark, did you see the walk around video that we did, and what are your thoughts on that? How did that compare to, when Jake was with us?
I mean,
did it bring any feelings to you? I guess I should say any immediate like, ooh, that's different, or don't like that, or like that.
No, none of that. I mean, two things that stood out to me was one, and I just, said out loud, like, yes, and then with my AirPods in and my wife on the couch is like, shut up. What do you. But it was when you were talking about the Phovites, and just when you see like, let's just call it, I like common name, like it's a type of brain coral, right? Like Phovites or whatever, like to see one grown out into a colony is pretty stunning. And you brought that up, and I love that you said that, because that is one of those corals that I think is underappreciated. But if you really grow it out, it's like, even if it's a mild, non-fancy color, it's pretty spectacular. And then the other thing that I got nostalgic watching that video, because I have family. My wife's family still lives out there. So every summer we're out in Colorado or during Christmas. And Jake was my little getaway, like, okay, like hanging out with the in-laws, good time. And then like Jake's like, when you coming over? And we just go hang out at the studio, drink beers. And then just when you're feeling super relaxed and having a good time with your friend, like he sets up a camera, like, we're going to make a video for Reef Builders. And you're like, son of a, but it was like a little, not that I love my in-laws. So it's not like I need a refuge from them, but it was just like a cool add-on. Every time I went to visit family, I'd go hang out with my good friend Jake, and we just sit around those tanks and chat it up. And so I have all these personal memories of just sitting there on that couch. And the other thing is that he's got this crazy Yamaha sound system in there. I don't know if you've caught on to that, but like the music in there is phenomenal. Like,
yeah,
he spent like a fortune on this crazy sound system in there. And so we just like, oh, put this song on, put that song on. And we just chat about stuff. And, which is really I think the origin of why Reef Therapy started, because I think he's like, oh, we should just take what we do. And so yeah, you walking around and showing these tanks, like I was sitting there like, oh, that was like a very special place to me, and I was feeling a little bit nostalgic about it. And then listening to you talk with Chris Meckley and Raj, you're like, oh, we should all go back and like talk about why this coral's cool and why that's coral cool. I'm like, and then you realize like it wasn't just special for me. It was special for Chris. It was special for you guys, And so I didn't get sad, but I was just kind of like, oh man, that place is special beyond just the content on YouTube. It was like a place where people came together. So
yeah, it felt like it still feels like that. Still feels like that. I didn't get those opportunities like you did to go, and I think my first time was at Reef Stock this year, being in the studio. Jake had invited me a couple times to come out, but I just didn't have the time to do that, unfortunately. But it feels like that when you go, and I can't describe it. It's like you feel like you're in some sort of saltwater holy land or something. And with it just being three of us in there, Jimmy the cameraman, me, and Jack, it was kind of surreal, because you're just kind of there with all of these hundreds of thousands of living organisms all around you. And I wish we could have spent more time on each tank, but I really wanted, like I said in the video, I just really wanted to show people that everything's still there.
Yeah.
And that it's doing really well, So
it looked really good. Everything looked really great. And I love that even like one of my favorite things in there are the snake polyps, and it's like even that showed up and had a little bit of, a few minutes on the video or a few seconds. And I was like, yes, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's a special place just because, not to turn this into a giant Jake podcast, but I think we all know, like, you brought up like when it's your career, you don't have a tank at home. You know, you were joking about Raj and Chris and all that in the last podcast, which I enjoy listening. I love going on vacation because I have stuff to listen to where I can't listen to myself. I hate that, you know. But Jake was this weird, rare guy. Like he could have like 80 hours a week at a public aquarium, and he'd still have like 30 tanks at home. I mean, he produced all that Reef Builders content, and then when the camera turned off, he was still this hardcore hobbyist that just, you think like, all right, camera's off, like talk to me about anything but reef keeping. It's like, no, like Jake would be like, so what do you think about, you know, like you'd go down a reef keeping rabbit hole with him, and that's rare. I mean, I don't even have that, you know. I struggle with burnout, and sometimes I lose interest, and all I do is show up for this once a week, and there's no really. So it's somebody that was like producing videos and writing blogs and doing this and on phone calls with everybody in the industry to not lose interest and still keep all those tanks going, to me is really unique. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I thank you for your thoughts on that. You know, I feel like maybe you should come out with us, you know, if we decide, you know, that Chris Meckley trip, you know, go out there and kind of just share some deeper stories about specific corals and things, because every one of those things has a story for sure. So some comments on the last video. This one from Miko Stenberg. I don't know if you guys saw this. He says, it is kind of interesting when native English speakers pronounce scientific names. As in my understanding, scientific names consist of mostly Latin words and to some extent Greek words, and some names in other languages, it would most likely be closest to correct to use some of those websites that pronounce words in Italian. Pronunciation is quite different from English.
Yes.
And I said maybe we should take some classes or something along those lines. But I tried to find I was like, I'm sure Google has a way to pronounce Latin words.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we weren't talking about which way is the right way or the wrong way. It's which way do you pronounce it? Right. 'Cause there are two camps. There's Acropora and Acropora, and Montipora and Montipora, and you're falling into one of those two camps unless there's some third one that I don't know about. Maybe we should make that.
Montipora.
Well, it'd be like a French guy telling a Quebecois person that they're saying something wrong. It's like, well, you know, there's room for, we traveled across the Atlantic Ocean and we lived by ourselves in Canada, and we, you know, I mean, like, there's got to be room for the word I'm not looking for is interpretation but for things evolving and how things are pronounced, right?
Plus, Canadians are nice, so you know, that pronunciation's a little bit more correct. And
I'll side with Team Canada. Yeah,
definitely.
I wonder if he was specifically referring to when we did talk Cropera or Acropora. Or if we were or Chris or somebody was just mispronouncing a bunch of scientific names, but
maybe we butchered something.
But like Montipora, like that, like I'd rather say Montipora, right? Like, and maybe one's right, one's wrong, but like Montipora, like I don't have time for that, dude. You
know. We know. Got another comment here from Trevor Hiller. Says, Raj, can you share some of those MRC projects / builds somewhere, even if it's not through Reef Builders? I'm building an equipment room in my basement and would love some, quote, industrial inspiration.
Oh, cool. Yeah, definitely. We actually have got some releases from some clients, so we'll be able to do some really cool videos on some builds from the ground up. One of those is in Brazil, so you know, if I've got any volunteers who wants to come with me and maybe film and document this build, I don't know, might know somebody.
I just got global entry, so just want to use it once. I saw on TikTok do you guys, you've heard of red flags with people, but have you heard of beige flags?
No.
It's like in between. It's like just below a red flag. So it's not like a make or break with a relationship. But one of this TikTok I saw was my husband's beige flag is that he has TSA pre-check and I don't, but he still goes through TSA pre-check.
That's Raj.
That's me.
That's Raj. Yeah,
that's me. My wife has refused to get it forever, and so I'm like, yeah, I'm not. You go through your line that you have chosen, and I'm going to go through my line for years. Until just this year now, she finally got global entry. Now, she didn't get to use it because to get the appointment, you either have to get lucky or use that app that you found, Remy, or you could do your interview when you come back in from an international trip. So she now finally actually has it.
Yeah. The interview is like, are you a felon? No. You should probably know that before I get here, right? I sat down to get my interview, and I was in a room filled with, I don't know, 2 or 3 different people that were sitting next to me, and this one lady was very talkative, so I was like, well, I'll ask her how long she's had this appointment for, and she said that she made the appointment 4 months prior to that day that we were both sitting there. I think it was 2 weeks ago. And I had this software program that basically roves all the sites that you want to go to for cancellations and things like that, like every second of the day. And it will text you whenever something comes available. So it took me all of 3 weeks. And it was $29, I think. But that's the biggest issue with global entry. There's plenty of TSA pre-check interviews or where you got to show up in person, take your picture, all that kind of stuff. But the global entry is so backed up. It takes months. It's crazy. But yeah, the guy was the Homeland Security guy was like, or Border Patrol or whatever it was. He was like, so do you have any felonies or anything like that we should know about? I was like, no. He's like, okay, I've had 3 or 4 of those today. And I was like, how would you try to get global entry if you have a felony on your record? Like, shouldn't you know by then that you don't get all the bells and whistles anymore? But yeah, so I've got that now.
Yeah,
Anyways, I digress.
I got lucky because I got mine early, so I got an interview, normally scheduled, and just had to drive down to the airport and get it knocked out. But
Nice.
using it was really cool because you don't show them anything. Like it scans your face or your eyes, and then it tells you to go talk to the guy, and you stand in front of the camera and say your name, and then he says, "Okay, you're good." Like I was like, "Wow, that's it. This is amazing."
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But, since my
Yeah,
wife didn't have it, she had to go stand in the peasant line. And then I had to wait and baggage claim for like a half hour for her to come out.
That's funny. It'd be nice for like dive trips and things like that. Yeah. So I don't know if anybody is listening that's planning any kind of international dive trips. Definitely a good thing to have for sure. Before we kind of wrap for the night, I wanted to talk about a video that we put out with 10 affordable and unique corals. So not just affordable, but also something that, a reef keeper could come over to your house and look in your tank and be like, oh, okay, I see you. So I wanted to kind of know what those were for you guys. Do either one of you guys want to start on
well, I haven't watched the video, so I could be Captain Obvious. Like, yep, that one was in the video. Yep, that one was in the video. I'm
it's
like,
funny.
Well,
I haven't watched it either, so it's so weird.
Me neither. Well, one of my inexpensive, but I think it's really cool coral is Symposium. It's I don't know. It's almost like a fancy version of GSP. So it grows like that in a mat. It's super cheap, but I like my GSP and the moving little polyps and stuff. So it just does it for me, and it's blue. And blue's my color, so that was always my cheap but really cool. Once it grows out, right? If it's a frag, it looks kind of stupid, but when it grows out, it's really, really cool for me.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Okay, yeah, I've seen this before for sure.
Yeah,
like it. Do you have anything else?
I mean, your easy ones like your Rhodactis mushrooms that are I had this orange one. It was orange and blue. That, I mean, it's a cheap coral, but the coloration that you get from it, and then when it grows out and you have a nice colony, it looks spectacular. And it was always one of those where everybody loved it. You get people the non-aquarium people that would come in and be like, wow, that's amazing. But even the reef geeks had to admit that, okay, that's pretty impressive. This is a pretty big colony in my tank. And the color is bright orange with these blue stripes. It looked impressive. And I always got requests for frags for those. Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark, anything on your list?
So going back to what you said in that Reef Builder Studio video about, when like a brain-like coral's fully grown out, like a Phavites, I like Moselea. It only comes in green. It's not very colorful, but it's just a cool, it's like little, because the polyps grow kind of concave versus convex, right? So they're like, it's just a cool coral.
Jake's is still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's in like that rack, right? Or is it? Yeah.
Yep. In the mode rack.
Yeah. Diploastria heliopora, sort of like the opposite, where it's like a Phavites, but like the polyps are very conical. And so if you see like 2 or 3 polyps on a frag disc, you're like, yeah. But like when that grows into a softball-sized colony, I think it's really cool looking. Again, not very colorful, just green. I like how like green corals are now boring, right? So to go away from green, one coral that Jake and I always loved was orange branching Samacora. It'll encrust and it'll encrust and it'll encrust, and then when it starts branching out, like that's a really cool coral, and it'll have like different shades of orange and sometimes little tips of yellow. And then for the SPS nuts, the Steve Elias Blue Stag Acro. I haven't seen that one in a bit, and I'm sure it's out there. Blue corals aren't really hip right now because they don't really look pretty under Windex lighting. But back in the day, like that was the most beautiful, in my opinion, acropora. It was a staghorn. It grew quickly. I'm sure it's still out there. Back in the day, that was like a $40 frag. I'm sure it's been renamed like Coco or like Papa Smurf Acropora, and it's $300 now. I don't know. I Googled the name just out of curiosity, and I didn't see anybody really selling it. So I assume it was such a successful coral that it's got to still be out there. It's probably just under a different weird trade moniker, but that's a great coral. You could even get it to go kind of turquoise with like brown. And it sounds like bad, like, oh, brown is bad. But like brown coralites on a turquoise coral was actually really pretty cool.
Shout out to Jason Fox, who has a Papa Smurf acro.
Oh, there you go. I called it.
I don't know if this is the exact one or not. This looks like a smaller species.
Yeah, it's probably not a
staghorn. It doesn't look like a stag.
Or...
No, it doesn't look like a staghorn.
Old timers will know what that. It's still out there. It has to be. Like I'm sure Battle Corals has it, probably under a different name. I'm sure everybody's got it because there's just no way that coral disappeared. It's just too pretty. But it probably doesn't look the best under super blue lighting.
What was
right?
it called? Yeah. I seem to remember.
Steve Elias or Elias Blue Stag.
Okay, now I was thinking of something else.
It was like Acropora, Loise, Loisette.
Loisette, yeah. Loisettae.
Yeah, how do you pronounce that? Ask the Greek guy. He probably knows.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's such a cool stag. Like you put that in with like a green slimer. And we talked about that in past reef therapies. Like, where have all the staghorns gone, The Brolocensis, remember that guy? Like it was like turquoise with a purple tip and super furry. It was like a millipora that was a staghorn, but I just and all of those corals did exist in the Reef Builder studio. 'Cause last time I was there, that summer before he died, where it's just him and me hanging out. These were I remember talking about Steve Elias. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's got that right here." I'm like, "Oh hey, you remember the Abrolocensis? Oh yeah, I got that right here." I'm like, "I haven't seen that coral in 10 years, you know." And then the other one was yellow branching parietes. Like, I remember like yellow branch. Whatever happened to yellow branching parietes? Oh yeah, I got one right here. You know, he had everything in that studio, but none of that stuff I would run into with the coral vendor. So,
Yeah.
I hope that one's still affordable because it was like $40 back. It's a staghorn. It grows like a green slimer. Like it shouldn't be expensive.
I feel like that one needs to be in the 400.
Yeah.
That's kind of what he wanted to do, right? Put a bunch of staghorns in there.
Yeah, I
Like
agree.
that'd be a good one. Good addition. If if you're listening, acquire.
You already have it. It's somewhere in the studio.
It's somewhere in there. Somewhere.
Go find it.
Did you have any other ones, Mark?
I think that's it. That's all I had. I like Rogers Rhodactis because I'm a sucker for like Superman Rhodactis or some of the trade names. But yeah, that orange and blue Rhodactis, like that's such a great coral. So yeah.
I had the snake polyps were one of my first corals on my list here, and seeing them because we've got a frag at my local fish store, and it probably has, I don't know, 30 polyps on it, and it is poop brown. It is not an attractive coral whatsoever. But then at the studio, he had the St. Patrick's Day one where it was like green and there's like yellow studs all over it. That thing looked really cool, and I feel like that's one of those corals where the reef keeper is they're coming over to your house, they're gonna be like, I like that. That's cool. That's a neat looking.
Did you still have the
coral.
Orange one? It was man.
Yep.
And I can't find those. For a while, Unique Corals was selling them, but I haven't seen them since. Like if I see that for sale, I would buy it. Yeah.
Yeah, snake coral. Or snake polyps. That's pretty cool. A lot of people that I've never owned. I've never owned them, but a lot of people say the polyps are, even though it is photosynthetic, the polyps don't really come out during the daytime.
Yeah,
mainly
just come out at night. Yeah.
The second one on my list is the Endophilia.
Those are.
It's kind of like and there might be people that correct me on this, but it's kind of like a mix between an acantho and Cinerina, Cinerina. It's kind of still has those transparent flesh to it, but it's not opaque like an acantho is. Huge on the sand. They come in purples and greens and reds and
oh man, some of the new red ones that are showing up, I have to have one. I have a green one and it's beautiful, but then you see these new reddish ones with white mixed in, and where the hell did those come from, right? Like those are beautiful. I hope there is. I've never seen those in person. You guys have been to more trade shows than I hope they're as good as the pictures. So
yeah, Endophilia is actually, there's actually a decent showing at frag swaps now. I don't know if they just found a honey hole somewhere or know where to look now, because I know they're a deeper coral. They're like 90 feet ish, I think, and they're more of a sand dweller and not so much of attached to a vertical side of a rock or something like that. So. But yeah, I'd love to have one of those. What a great showpiece in the middle of your sand bed. My last one's the Echinata. Just like an orange and green splattered Echinata. You know what I mean? Super cheap too. I remember I was at a shop and I was like, how much is that guy right there? Thinking it was like gonna be a $60, $70 coral. He was like, $15, dude. It's like, I will take that. But they're aggressive. And that's probably the only downside to the Acanthastria echinata. But
that's like that Sophastria that Reef Gen had. It was like a blue body with, I want to say either pink or reddish polyps. it was dirt cheap. It was like $10, $5 a frag. You find them just everywhere. And the cool thing about it was if you put it over a dead coral skeleton from like an acro, it would cover it, and you would have this acro that was the Cephastria. So if it has this just kick-ass coloration with these huge polyps, but it looked like an acro. That was just dope.
Yeah, that's cool.
I've seen them do it with like plastic skulls and,
Yeah, they got a lot more creative now. We were pretty lame back then. We're like, all right, what do I do with this coral skeleton except, to get it out of my wife's hands, because she puts it around the house for decor, because apparently like Pottery Barn sell these things for hundreds of dollars. And she's like, oh, I've got a treasure trove of shame here from my husband's reef tank. I'll just put this up for everybody to see.
Yeah, many years ago, my mom went down to the Florida Keys and she brought me back this 12-inch coral skeleton, but it was a Acropora humilis skeleton. And I was like, well, I don't want you to buy dead coral skeletons near a reef, because that's just not good. That means they chiseled it out, or, B, this coral did not come from the Florida Keys, but it was in the gift shop down there, and it was like an Acropora humilis. I'm like, yeah, no, that didn't come from. But I appreciate the gesture, and it's a beautiful piece. I have it, on my fireplace. But going back to Cyphastria, like I had the meteor showers and all that, and then I picked up an orange one and a banana yellowish greenish one. The orange one knows it's a Cyphastria. It's like, I'm just going to encrust everything and make you regret that you added me. The yellow one just is fizzling out, and I can't explain why. And the other mystery I'll leave you with, we don't have to answer it because I know we're already an hour in, is all my acroporas are just colored up, growing great. And then my Jason Fox that I've had forever is just browned out. Just the pink and the yellow tips gone. And ICP, this has been going on for like 6 months. ICP is happy. Everything's happy. There's a ice and fire echinata growing right next to it that's like, life's great. Check out all my colors. Can't figure it out. And it's weird because right before Jake passed away, he had the same question about a coral in one of those peninsula tanks where just one of the corals decided like, hey man, I'm going doo-doo brown. Sorry. And everything else. And he was like, what do you think it is? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not keeping it. I'm not really an SPS head anymore. So it's weird.
Interesting.
Weird stuff, man.
Send a water sample to Steve, see what he finds, if he finds.
It's going to be those traces.
I don't know.
That's just a guess. I don't know. It's just a guess.
I kind of wonder because the echinata is growing into it. And maybe even though they're like, fighting it out on the edge, like maybe the colony itself is like, sometimes the coral's like, I don't like this.
Yeah. Which kind of which acro is it?
The fox flame acro.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a coral that's been growing for me like a weed. I throw it in my backyard, like I hack it, I know it's a popular coral, but I don't want to be like, okay, I'm going to post a little thing online and sell some, I don't want to go through that. So I just hack it.
Now you're going to get reefers that are going to come hang out in your backyard.
There's just dead versions of it out there. But yeah, I don't know. It's not going well for me on that one anymore.
Do people do that? That's got to be the weirdest thing to watch from a distance, is just some dude throwing dead corals or just coral frags in his backyard.
That's me.
I just have this like cartoon image of like,
well, what do you do with it?
Dad's out there throwing coral in the backyard again.
My doorstop for my fence gate is a dead goniopora, like a flower pot skeleton that's like this big. I've got coral skeletons in my landscaping. I obviously have them for decor in my house now. I've got them all over the place. But,
I always joke like 100 years from now, some archaeologist or paleontologist, whatever, they're going to be digging and they're like, there was a reef here. This questions all our thoughts about what was here 1,000 years ago.
The Red Sea used to connect here.
Yeah, this is a Red Sea coral. We thought it was a deciduous forest 1,000 years ago.
That's what happened millions of years ago. They're finding the Petoskey stones in Michigan, and
Yeah, some guy
Like, they just had
away.
They just had coral tanks back then. What up? You know.
My neighbor was the victim of any of my dead livestock. I hated that guy. I would always
just chuck it over.
Just chucked it at his house.
The best is like zinnia. Like that stuff smells so bad.
Oh man, I had a sea slug, and that thing died, and so I had to net him out. And good God, it smelled bad. I chunked that thing right at his front door, and it landed in the bushes right outside his front door. So it was perfect. Oh man, I was so happy when you moved.
Georgia's brutal. What a weird place. Heard about your peach crop. It's not good.
I don't know what the Reef Club is like now. I'm sure it's awesome. And Raj, you had a much longer involvement with it. I can only speak to what it was 22 years ago, and I had to compare it to like going to Jake's store and there's a Reef Club meeting and there's a keg outside and there's people grilling food and you want to go ski this weekend? And it was like this, and then I came to the first Reef Club meeting in Atlanta, and we got in trouble because after the Reef Club, we went to Taco Mac and we had beers, and somebody voiced concern with the Reef Club about drunk driving and this and that, and it was just like, all right, I'm never going to another Reef Club meeting again. No offense to the Atlanta Reef Club. I'm sure it was a lot cooler after that, but like this was 22 years ago, so I don't know.
We had a good stint, and we would have coolers back there with corals and beer.
See,
and so we would hang out and just talk reef, and we'd have our speaker or whatever else was going on. And then we started doing like non-speaker events. So we would just go to a restaurant, and I would set it up ahead of time, saying, "Hey, we're going to bring X number of people, so I need this section." For us, I want some specials. I want this, that, and the other. And they were like, hell yeah, we'd love that. And we'd go do trivia night. They would have food specials. They'd have drinks. And it was just great. It was just a social event because, that's what we were kind of doing with the learning events too. And I was like, let's just do one that's straight up social. And those were a big hit.
That's good.
But the attendance, this was after I was done, and this is when Facebook's groups started getting bigger, and then people started gravitating more towards that versus the forums, and then they lost that personal connection because they would watch videos rather than go in person. So I really don't know how it's doing now. I haven't really checked.
I sometimes put stuff for sale there just because I know it's local, and it's like, okay, well, it's a hobbyist. They could probably benefit from this thing or whatever, but I don't know. It's like, okay, I may be able to get $50 for this or $50 for that, but after you've had a few no shows or you get the one guy that is kind of like, ooh, this guy's like, oh, you have a beautiful daughter, and I'm like, she's 12,
right.
Then it was like, you know what, throwing it in the backyard and letting some paleontologists find it 1,000 years later started to sound a lot better. I still do sell stuff occasionally there, but I don't know. I'm not in that. I'm not in it to make money,
Yeah.
I'd rather give it away.
That's even worse though. I found that to be harder.
Yeah.
When I tried giving stuff away, they would want me to deliver it or meet them, or I'm like, no, I'm giving this to you for free. You're going to come when it's convenient for me, and here's the rules, here's the time. But people would get so mad. I gave away a tank, full tank setup with stand and everything, and I said, look, here's the deal. It has to be picked up today, has to be picked up within these hours, and I'm not lifting a finger. And the guy reached out, said, hey, I can be there right away. I'm like, cool, okay, it's yours. And a bunch of other people said, hey, I can come at this time, I can come at that time, I can come on such and such day. This guy came, I went to lunch, it was at work. He picked it up and, never saw him again. And I've actually never, ever seen him. I've talked to him online. But if he was standing in front of me, I wouldn't know him. I wouldn't know that that's the guy. And the guy that called dibs on the tank that had all these conditions about when he was going to be able to pick it up was so furious that he didn't get it. He was like, no, that was mine. I called dibs and you just gave it to your friend and this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, first of all, it's my tank. I can give it to whoever I want to. And he got mad that I wouldn't name the guy. I was like, well, I'm not telling you who it is so you can harass him about it.
What are you going to do?
Right. It's like, it's nobody's business. It was my tank. I gave it away to somebody and they're going to use it. That was the other conditions. No flipping it. I want somebody that's actually going to use it. And then years later, right, so this was the right guy to give the tank to. Years later, he breaks the tank down and he's like, hey, I've broken the tank down and I'm going to get rid of it. Is it okay if I sell this? I was like, yes, absolutely. You put in a lot of work on it. You've used it. You did everything that I'd wanted somebody to do. It is your tank. Absolutely. Sell it if you want to sell it, or, you don't have to give it away.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You're like a wizard, You sent off a little, a person to do a mission. He came back and he's like, I've completed my mission. The wizard says, you may sell.
You may sell. Your reward for this work.
Well, you get cynical because, it's like the early days. I moved to Atlanta and I remember this lawyer worked like downtown, high-profile lawyer guy. He's like, hey, went on vacation, came back, everything's dead. And I was like, I remember messaging him. I'm like, hey man, that sucks. I'm a kid who just graduated from college and I've got like my first job and I'm paying off a student loan, but I'm like, I got frags. I'm going to hook you up. So I gave him a bunch of frags. We became friends. Then I met another guy. He was an HVAC technician, right? So you got like a high profile lawyer, this kid paying off a student loan debt, and an HVAC guy. And like, we just go for beers. We trade corals. We were the only people into SBS at the time. And then we get reprimanded for going for beers after. Yeah. And then you just try to recreate that camaraderie, or as like, Jake and Chris would call the Reefers Code. You try to recreate that with a circle of people, and I would try. And the next set of people, I'm like, here, free corals. And then a week later, they're selling my corals. Yeah. And I was like, come on, man. And it just happened enough times that, Jake jokes, but like I became a hermit. Like I don't know anybody in Atlanta that keeps reef tanks. Like I know Raj now, but I really got to know Raj through Jake. I don't hang out with anybody that keeps a reef tank. I don't like go like, oh, let's go drink beers in the basement and stare at a reef. Like none of that happens anymore. I tried multiple times and just got burned where I was like, it's just not worth my time. And it's kind of sad that it's maybe it's I'm a sample size of one, so maybe that's not the way things are out there, but it just kind of bummed me out where I was like, I don't need this. Like I still like keeping reef tanks and I can interact with people online that live in Colorado or live in California and like, oh, check this thing out, and have a good time. So
maybe we should do that. Let's go hang out at a reefer's place, just staring at his tank, have some scotch, maybe a Cuban.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm game.
Okay.
I've got some doo-doo brown Jason Fox frags for you. Don't know why they're brown right now, but
if you're not here by 4:00, they're going in the lawn.
Well, like my lawn service is always like, would you like the annual lime treatment to raise the pH of your soil? I'm like, no, I got it.
Got this.
Oh, good. I think we need a Bumble for reef keepers, I think is what you're trying to say here. Just trying to find some reefing friends.
I do, yeah. Well, I miss the old days, man. Like,
Yeah.
That's why what was her name? Who worked at the Georgia Aquarium? Sally something? Do you remember her, Raj? She had like the most amazing reef tanks. And it was just like, she was a stay-at-home mom back then. And she eventually worked for the Georgia Aquarium, which was awesome. But she had like the most amazing reef aquariums. And anyway. See, now I'm going down deep. Anyway, continue, Remy.
I was just trying to wrap it up.
Yeah.
No, I do want to, if you guys want to say anything before we go for the evening, please feel free.
I think I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys again. If I was there, we could have our own little reef club of 3, but unfortunately, it's just like you guys, apparently. Have fun with your Cubans and your drinks. I'll just be here. I want to say thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, as usual, for Raj or Mark or myself, please leave them in the comment section below, and we'll do our best to get to those. And remember to use the code RT10 when you grab an ICP test at icpanalysis.com. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.